Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're going to be continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. In this instance, more Taki Udon MiSTer Pi updates, because there's been a lot of news on his Twitter about new batches coming in, about the new flagship that's going to be a PVM, as well as a couple hints at the handheld. I know a lot of you guys are still waiting to be able to order these, and you should be able to do that soon, but I wanted to go over all of the updates so let you know what is coming as far as the future of MiSTer Pi is concerned. Before you get involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. Now obviously the MiSTer Pi is out. I did a review and batch 1 has been sold, and there's a ton of users out there playing it right now, but I totally understand that there are a lot of people still waiting for this. And just so you know, if you tried to order in the first place and you had some issues with the address verification, that's apparently been completely rectified and won't be an issue on round 2. And the last time we talked about MiSTer Pi, we were going over the PlayStation 1 or PSX inspired mainstream console. You're going to see 2 different memory card ports there, as well as the PlayStation 1 style connectors for the controllers and a USB port in the middle. So if you want to watch that video and you missed it, I will leave a link in the description below if I remember. 10 out of 10 times I usually do not. But there's a lot more information out there, and one of the things we've been talking about for a while but not recently is the PVM shaped flagship console. And you're going to see here, if we actually go into this photo, it's going to very closely resemble a Sony PVM television with all of the different buttons as far as inputs. You have 2 USB in the middle and a bunch of knobs on the right. So it seems like this is going to be a full PVM shaped flagship console with MiSTer FPGA inside and some USB ports in the front. You're going to see there's brightness, volume, and auxiliary knobs as well, so it seems like there's going to be dual inputs, because if we go to the right, there's going to be a PVM mode and a MiSTer mode. Now don't be confused, it's not like Taki Udon and his company are spinning up CRT televisions. This is going to be an OLED panel that kind of seems to resemble a Sony PVM. If you don't watch me or the channel, you might not know, but I absolutely love my PVMs and CRT televisions. They are awesome, but OLED gets so incredibly close to it, and it is another fun thing that seems to be a pivot on the MiSTer Pi formula. Imagine being able just to plunk down a box with an OLED panel in it, being able to use your MiSTer FPGA on that with all the adjustments, as well as having some inputs in the back, so you could use that panel for other consoles as well. Not sure if there's any sort of scaler built in outside of what the panel could do as far as bumping the resolution, but it will be interesting to see. Now I do not know if it's going to take analog sources whatsoever. It could just be HDMI in, it could be all sorts of analog ports in. We're going to have to wait and see, but it is fun and exciting. I'd love something that looks like a PVM on my kind of setup, just basically being able to play MiSTer FPGA as well as put other consoles into it in a smaller OLED form factor, because I have a 65-inch LG C4, definitely not something I can pop into my office. And again, there's so many different ways to watch MiSTer FPGA footage, and if you don't have the space or you don't want to have to carry around a heavy PVM, then this might be a really awesome option. I'm not sure what size it's going to come in, maybe 14-inch, maybe 20-inch, we're going to have to wait and see. This one definitely is exciting as far as the future is concerned. And again, the Sony PVM is such an interesting shape and design. It is so classic, and these are definitely coveted televisions that get really expensive now. As you see here, me just adjusting around the service menu, the overall button layout is identically mirroring what you're going to see here, except you're not going to be seeing stuff like RGB or sync. That should just be taken care of what's going on in the television in and of itself. But it'll be super interesting to see what happens here, and I can't wait to talk more about it in the future. Now, as far as the new ordering batch is concerned, that is delayed a little bit because Taki Udon and his company are making cases for the Turbo Bundle, and you'll see he's showing off 3 different ones here, which kind of remind me a little bit of other MiSTer FPGA cases on the market. There seems to be 3 different colorways. This kind of blueberry translucent blue here looks really nice with the R² logo. You're going to have a classic black as well, probably a dust magnet, but honestly, what isn't these days? At least in my setup, all sorts of things always get dust on them. And then you're also going to get this kind of frosted translucent look as well, and these are going to be things that you can order with your MiSTer Pi when the next round goes up for the Turbo Bundle. And as I said in previous videos, I can't recommend enough getting a case on your MiSTer FPGA. I show them without a case on camera all the time, but none of my setups that I actually use and play on a day-to-day basis are caseless. You'll see that's going to be $185 before shipping, which is still going to be under that $200 mark, and you're going to get absolutely everything you need for your MiSTer Pi setup. You're going to see the contents here are basically the same thing I reviewed a couple months ago when it came in, but you're also going to get that new case. And there are going to be some slight changes to the RAM as well that I'll get into in just a moment. But if you've never bought a MiSTer FPGA before, the Turbo Bundle is the one that I would definitely recommend picking up in round 2 if you get lucky enough to be able to grab one. And you'll see here that he mentioned it's going to be a little bit after October 8th. I'm recording this on the 21st, nothing is up yet, so it just seems like they're waiting on the full manufacturing run of the cases so they can ship everything at once. And additionally, there have been some changes to the RAM as well. There's no longer going to be a sticker on them. They're going to a different metal plating technique, as there was a little bit of an issue on some RAM modules with the Nintendo 64 core, but that's been completely taken care of. Robert FPGA Zoomspots went in and changed a little bit of the code to make sure everything worked, and you'll see here they've also switched over to gold connectors, and they're QAing everything a little bit more just to make sure there is no issue. And this only presented by like 5 to 10% of the users. A few games in the Nintendo 64 core would freeze or fail to launch when they would work totally fine on a Terasic developed MiSTer FPGA with RAM from other vendors, but that has been taken care of in the core, and Taki Udon and his company are going in to make sure there's no issues on their end as well. So it's really not something that's going to be relevant moving forward in the future. It does seem to be taken care of, and you'll see here that somebody did ask if they're ever going to solder the SD-RAM modules onto the board in and of itself, and Taki Udon says maybe. If you haven't seen my build of the QM Tech MiSTer clone, it is a really nice device, and it does have all of the RAM soldered on the bottom, leaving you those two different GPIO headers to do with kind of as you want. And it was a completely different way to set up a MiSTer FPGA, or at least a Terasic DE10 clone. And you'll see here as I flip the board over, the RAM is going to be on the bottom, which was a really unique design, and has been proven to be very effective of being a MiSTer FPGA, just like the MiSTer Pi or a Terasic DE10 Nano. And that's the QM Tech board again. If you want to pick one of those up, you can usually find them on AliExpress, but it seems like stock can be a little bit limited. But it did prove to us that there are more than one way to be able to fit RAM onto a MiSTer FPGA, and my guess is going to be that that's going to be very helpful for the MiSTer handheld, which we'll talk about in just a moment, because the traditional way to put the RAM onto the GPIO header definitely makes the board taller, and even if you went to a 90-degree angle, it is still a relatively thick assembly. So I'm guessing maybe when you see the MiSTer FPGA handheld board designs, you're going to see the RAM soldered directly to that DE10 clone, because it just allows for a much thinner profile, especially if you don't put stuff like the Ethernet port on there. We'll have to wait and see what the actual handheld and the dock has for ports, but I would assume maybe Ethernet might not be something that goes in. And you'll see here there are photographs of the new packaging of the MiSTer Pi Turbo Pack, and again, if you don't own a MiSTer FPGA whatsoever, this is the one I'm going to recommend to you, because it's going to come in the box, it's going to be in a case, ready to play. All you need to do is plug it in and start loading up your games. That's going to be great for newcomers as well, because MiSTer FPGA isn't difficult at all to set up, but honestly, getting it ready out of the box just to plug and play is great. And you'll see there have been some questions here about the handheld, and it looks like that's going to be coming after the flagship console. And my guess would be the handheld is going to be 100% the hardest thing to develop, because you're dealing with a very small space, you're dealing with heat management in a handheld case. It is just going to be a very big engineering challenge, but I'm sure Taki and his team are up to it. And there's definitely been a lot of different teases as what it's going to look like, and I know people always ask me if I have any time frame on the handheld. It's just going to be coming in the future, and obviously it is the thing that I'm the most excited about as well, because I've got a ton of different MiSTer FPGA setups here that I've shown you guys on camera, but the one thing I can't do is take MiSTer FPGA out of the house with me, sit on the train, and play some FPGA gaming on the go. So that is definitely something I'm looking forward to, and when there are more updates on that, I will definitely let you know. But there has been mention of potentially changing out different PCBs to get a 6-button layout on the handheld versus 4. Would be great for the Capcom fighting games on the arcade side of things, would be great for stuff like Sega Genesis and Sega Saturn as well. I'm assuming that it's going to be a little bit tricky to have Nintendo 64 in a portable, just because the controls on that are so strange. You may need to pivot your button bindings ever so slightly, but the handheld is still coming. But honestly, the most exciting news to me is this flagship with the PVM controls. I can't wait to see what this thing actually looks like as far as renders, and then in real life is concerned. I will definitely review it as soon as it is available, but I hope it is a big dark gray box like a Sony PVM that I can put signals into the back and use that OLED screen to see whatever I want. But that's the current situation with the MiSTer Pi. A new wave or batch of orders is going to be opening up soon. Seems like they fixed all of that address verification stuff as well. So if you haven't been able to pick one of these up yet, you will be able to soon. And the next time we get more updates on the flagship, the mainstream console, or the handheld, I will definitely let you know. But think about grabbing one of these if you're not in the MiSTer FPGA ecosystem yet. It does everything a MiSTer does, and it does it for under $200. For that, we're done. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.